Undercover boss works at his own grocery store? Could not believe when he sees the cashier crying behind the counter. Frank Hayes, 62, founder of FreshHope Markets, wasn't just a businessman. He was a symbol. A man who clawed his way out of childhood poverty in rural Arkansas, worked double shifts at a local grocer as a teen, and eventually built a chain of stores known for fair prices, dignity, and trust. For years, FreshHope stood as a promise, real food for real people. Frank personally visited stores, hugged employees, and once paid a single mom's rent after overhearing her cry in the break room. But lately, Frank had grown distant, delegated too much. The company expanded faster than his principles could follow. And though the numbers looked good, something felt off. Customers had stopped writing him letters. The Springfield store, the one he opened with his wife by his side and his newborn daughter asleep in a stroller, had gone strangely silent. Then came the envelope. No return address. Just slid under his locked office door on a quiet Monday morning. He opened it, expecting another corporate form or donation request. But instead, there it was. A single photo, grainy, from a security camera probably. A young cashier, slumped behind the register, head in her hands, shoulders shaking, alone. On the back of the photo, "They're destroying everything you built." Frank didn't breathe. He just stared, his vision blurred. It wasn't the image alone, it was the truth behind it. The register in the background, his Springfield store, the first brick in the FreshHope Foundation, his life's work. He went to his laptop, pulled up internal reviews, flawless, suspiciously flawless. Training reports, passed, secret shopper scores, 98%. But something about it all felt sterile, engineered, not real. He called his district manager. "Everything good in Springfield?" he asked. "Oh yeah, Frank, numbers are up. Great morale. Doug's doing a fantastic job as store manager." Doug. That name made his stomach churn. Once a promising assistant, now too slick, too smooth. Frank remembered the way Doug dodged eye contact during their last meeting, how he rushed to shut the break room door when Frank walked past. He closed his laptop, and for the first time in 10 years, Frank didn't tell anyone his plan. He walked to the bathroom, picked up an electric razor, and shaved away the comfort, the gray beard that had become his symbol. He slipped on an old flannel from the back of his closet, took a pair of sneakers and dragged them across the gravel driveway until the soles looked worn and cracked, rubbed ash into the seams, added a fake limp, just enough to slow his gait, to make people underestimate him, to see who they really were when they thought no one important was watching. He packed nothing but a phone with a voice recorder app and a photo of his late wife. Frank wasn't a CEO now. He was Rick, a quiet, tired, recently bankrupt farmer from outside Kansas, trying to get back on his feet. Just looking for a job. Any job. Hey, I know so many of you come back to watch our stories, and it means the world. But the truth is, most of you watching right now still aren't subscribed. If you're one of them, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. It's completely free for you. And for me, it's the biggest support you could ever give. These stories take heart to tell. Let's keep telling them together. From the outside, the Springfield FreshHope still looked like the dream Frank had once built. Polished carts, polished smiles, organic produce stacked like art installations. The scent of baked bread wafted through the automatic doors. But as Rick limped through the entrance, a strange coldness crept into his bones. Something unseen, but unmistakably present. The air felt rehearsed. Big glossy posters lined the walls. Locally grown, lovingly served. Every customer matters. Family first, always. He almost laughed. He wrote those slogans 20 years ago on a napkin in a diner, when he still believed words could shape a world. Now they felt like lies. At checkout lane 4, a teenage boy, maybe 17, freckled chewing gum, scanned fruit absent-mindedly. Frank stepped up and asked gently, "Hey, son, you know if the manager's around? I'm looking for part-time work." The kid's demeanor shifted. The smile vanished instantly. Manager?" He fidgeted. looked around. He doesn't, talk to people straight up. Try back later or something. We got systems. Frank nodded, pretending to understand. Systems. He stepped aside and watched. From a corner near the floral section, he observed. And that's when he noticed her. A young woman, early 20s, name tag said Elena, was helping an elderly customer at Register 5. Her voice was soft, eyes kind. Frank leaned in. "I marked it down for you, Mrs. Clay," Elena whispered as she gently slipped a small container of chicken soup into the woman's reusable bag. "You mentioned your pension didn't come this month, so it's on me, okay?" The older woman blinked through tears, held Elena's hand tightly for a moment, and left. Frank's heart swelled. There it is, he thought. That's the FreshHope spirit. That's what we used to be. But then, crack! The intercom blared to life. "Elena, office, now!" Everyone froze. The warmth drained from the store. Customers ducked their heads. Staff looked away. Frank followed her with his eyes as she slowly walked to the back. Her shoulders slumped. Her hands shook slightly as she pushed open the office door. Frank moved toward the back and positioned himself just right, pretending to browse day-old bagels, but really peering through the narrow glass panel on the door. Inside, he saw him, Doug, store manager, mid-40s. Sunglasses pushed up like a crown on his head. One foot propped on the desk like he owned the world. He was red in the face, jabbing his finger toward Elena. "This isn't a soup kitchen. You do not discount items without logging it. You think we're made of money? You trying to be a hero?" Elena mumbled something. Doug's response was cold. "You either play by my rules or you clock out. Permanently. Got it?" Her lip quivered. She nodded, silent, then turned and walked out. When she returned to her register, her smile was gone. Her shoulders hunched. Her hands moved on autopilot. Frank swallowed a rising lump in his throat. He had once promised this store would always be a sanctuary. And now, it had become a machine, and good people were being crushed inside it. Then something else caught his eye. A man in a pressed gray suit stood in aisle 9. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't stocking shelves. He wasn't talking to anyone. He had a small device in hand, a phone or maybe a discreet camera, and was snapping silent photos of every aisle. He moved methodically, click, step, no cart, no basket, no name tag, no hello. And stranger still, no one acknowledged him. Not Doug, not the staff, not even the customers. Frank narrowed his eyes. Who was he? Why was he documenting the store? And why did he feel so familiar? The man made a final sweep past the manager's office, then disappeared through the back hallway. Frank stood frozen, heart pounding. His instinct screamed, something's going on, something bigger. And somehow Elena, the only person still showing compassion, was at the center of it. After nearly 2 hours of stocking shelves, Rick was finally pulled aside by a lanky, hollow-eyed employee named Kyle, who looked more like he belonged in a punk band than a grocery store. "Welcome to the grind," Kyle muttered without enthusiasm, tossing Rick a crumpled apron. "You restock fast, don't talk too much, and stay out of Doug's way." Frank played dumb. "Got it. Where do I clock in?" Kyle rolled his eyes. "You're already on the clock. They just won't tell you. Saves them from paying orientation. Real classy operation, huh?" He laughed dryly. Frank didn't. As they walked down the loading corridor, Kyle suddenly paused. "You didn't hear this from me," he said, voice lowering. "But if anyone says the words quality control, you didn't hear it. You didn't see it. You didn't even know we sell yogurt." Frank narrowed his eyes. "Oh, what does that mean?" Kyle glanced over both shoulders, then leaned in, barely above a whisper. "They're relabeling expired stuff, man. Milk, deli meats, even baby food." He looked sick just saying it. "Slap on a new date, call it farm fresh, jack up the price." Frank's stomach twisted. Kyle continued. "Supposedly a corporate decision. Not the Springfield store alone. Some guys in suits have been coming through weekly, but they don't talk to us. They just walk around, take notes, vanish." Frank's jaw clenched, but he nodded calmly. Thanks for telling me. Kyle scoffed. Don't thank me. Just don't end up crying in the walk-in freezer like Elena did last week. That night, well past closing, Rick volunteered to take out the trash. He needed air, space to think, but fate had other plans. As he pushed the heavy dumpster gate open behind the store, he froze. There, in the alley's dim orange light, was the suited man again. Only this time, he wasn't alone. Doug stood in front of him, glancing nervously over his shoulder. The air was thick with tension. Frank ducked silently behind a pallet of cardboard boxes, holding his breath. Then he saw it. Cash. Thick, folded bills. Handed from the suited man into Doug's shaking hands. "Keep your staff quiet," the suited man said sharply, his voice smooth like a practiced con artist. "One more leak, and this side deal's over." Doug's voice cracked. "I swear, I've got them in check. Elena's soft, but she won't talk. I already scared her off last week. Make sure, if anyone so much as whispers about relabeling or the new organic imports, we're both done. You like that bonus? Then shut them up." Doug nodded, tucking the cash quickly into his jacket. Frank's mind reeled. This wasn't just negligence. It was fraud. It was poisoning trust. Everything FreshHope stood for was being dismantled. Not by competitors, but from the inside. He backed away carefully, but his foot hit a loose aluminum can. Clank, the noise echoed. The suited man's head snapped toward the noise. Doug barked, "Hey, who's there?" Frank's heart pounded. He dove behind a dumpster, pressing his back against the cold metal, breathing hard. Footsteps approached, slow, measured. If you're gripped by this story, now's the moment. Hit that subscribe button to follow every undercover twist, betrayal, and redemption. This isn't just about groceries. It's about exposing what's really going on behind closed doors. Now back to the story. Doug's voice pierced the silence. "I swear, if one of you rats is snooping back here, I'll make sure you're bagging cat litter until retirement." Frank stayed perfectly still. Then, a beat of silence. The footsteps retreated. The back door slammed. He exhaled shakily, sweat on his brow despite the chill. He had come looking for a broken system, but what he'd found was rot at the core, and someone, possibly higher than Doug, was making real money off it. As Frank stood slowly, brushing gravel from his sleeves, he looked up at the night sky. He whispered to himself, voice tight with emotion, "They've turned my dream into a scam." His hands trembled, with fury, heartbreak, and resolve. But the next twist would break him even deeper, because when he re-entered the store through the back, he heard a muffled sobbing. He followed the sound, and there, crouched in the corner near the old employee lockers, was Elena, face buried in her hands. She didn't see him. She was whispering to herself, "Just 2 more shifts. I can't lose this job. Mom needs her insulin. Just 2 more." Frank's heart shattered. This wasn't just about bad management. This was about survival for people like Elena, and his own company was exploiting them. He turned and walked away. His disguise had served its purpose. The next morning felt colder, not in weather but in mood. The moment Rick stepped into the store, something was off. Conversation stopped when he walked by. Kyle wouldn't meet his eye. Even Elena looked nervous. Then came the booming voice over the intercom. "Rick to the front. Now." Frank limped forward slowly, heart pounding, eyes scanning the room. The entire staff was already gathered near the registers. A few customers hovered curiously. Doug stood at the front like a sheriff about to make an arrest. His smug grin said it all. This was no routine check-in. "You," Doug said, pointing with deliberate drama. "Rick, right?" Frank nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's me." Doug raised a clear plastic evidence bag like it was a trophy. Inside, a single protein bar with the wrapper half torn. "Found this in your locker, unscanned. Store property. Looks like we've got ourselves a thief." Whispers rippled across the crowd. Frank felt heat rising in his face, not from guilt, but fury. But he kept his voice even. "That's not mine. I never touched that bar." Doug scoffed loudly and shook his head. "Of course not. Thieves always say that. We've got rules here, Rick. This is a respectable establishment." And we don't tolerate stealing, especially not from someone pretending to be desperate. Frank tried to speak again, but Doug cut him off. Don't even try. You're done, and we've already contacted the police. That line stung, not because Frank feared jail, but because he had built this company to give people second chances, not take them away. He looked around. Some employees looked uncomfortable. Others kept their heads down. Kyle refused to look at him. Then quietly, Elena stepped forward. Wait, that's not right. I saw Kyle by Rick's locker this morning. He was holding something. He planted it. Doug's face turned beet red. Enough! Don't you dare lie for a thief. You're already on thin ice. You really want to go down with him? Elena stood her ground, though her hands trembled. I'm not lying, and I'm tired of pretending everything's fine here. You yell at us, you make us feel like garbage, and now you're framing people? Elena, Doug barked, back to your register, now! Frank stood silently, looking around at all of them. Young workers, stressed mothers, seniors bagging groceries just to make rent. He took a long, slow breath. Then without a word, he reached up and removed the cracked glasses from his face, pulled the beanie off his head, letting his salt and pepper hair fall, shrugged off the ripped flannel, revealing the clean-cut posture beneath. His limp vanished. For a long second, there was nothing but silence. Frank's voice was calm, measured, powerful. I'm not Rick. My name is Frank Hayes. The air split in half. I'm the founder and CEO of FreshHope Markets. 32 years ago, I opened this very store. I stocked the first shelf, swept the first floor, handed out food to hungry families during the 2008 crash. This place wasn't just built with money, it was built with heart. Doug's eyes widened. He took a step back. What are you talking about? You're lying. That's impossible. If you've ever worked somewhere you cared about and watched it fall apart from the inside, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. Let's expose it together. Frank didn't blink. You think I don't know every inch of this store? The mural in the break room. I painted that with my daughter. The small dent in register 4. That happened when a customer dropped a Thanksgiving turkey and we all laughed for 5 minutes straight. His voice trembled with emotion now. But this week, I've seen workers abused, customers ignored, food repackaged and passed off as organic. I've watched kindness punished and cruelty rewarded. He turned his eyes on Doug. And I've watched you frame someone, not for stealing food, but for daring to ask questions. Doug stammered. You can't prove. Frank cut him off, his voice rising now. Not in anger, but righteous conviction. I don't need proof. I have something stronger. He turned to the employees. I have them. The people who've been silenced, belittled, broken, but who kept showing up because they believed the store could still be what it was meant to be. Elena's eyes filled with tears. It was never about the job, she whispered. It was about helping people. That's why I stayed. Frank stepped closer to her and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. You're exactly the kind of person I built FreshHope for. Then he looked at Doug one final time. You're done. Effective immediately. HR will handle the termination. I'm personally contacting legal. Doug looked like a deflated balloon. He didn't speak. He simply walked out. No applause, no resistance, just shame. Frank turned back to the crowd. I went undercover to learn the truth, and I found something deeper than I feared, but I also found something more powerful than I'd hoped. He looked around, voice steady. I found heart, still here, still beating. Within 2 hours of Frank's reveal, a black SUV pulled up with a team of FreshHope corporate investigators. They didn't knock. They marched in. They pulled hard drives from the back office, checked every delivery receipt, cross-checked produce logs, and what they found? Worse than anyone imagined. Forged vendor contracts, expired meat relabeled with fake organic tags, fresh from farm stickers that came from a printer in Doug's office, security footage of cash, handoffs in back alleys, and worst of all, records of threats made against whistleblowers. The suited man, now identified as a rep from a shell company posing as a third-party supplier, had fled the scene. Police issued a warrant, but he was already gone. Out of state, possibly out of the country. Doug didn't say a word during the audit, but 3 days later, he was in cuffs, arrested for fraud, workplace intimidation, and obstruction of an internal investigation. That afternoon, Frank returned to his break room, the same one he once slept in during late-night shifts 30 years ago. Now it was filled with trembling employees. Some avoided eye contact. Others were openly weeping. He stepped to the center and looked each one in the eye. "When I started this store, I wanted it to feel like home. I'd grown up in trailers, lived off day-old bread. I didn't want anyone else to feel like that, like survival was the best they could hope for." He swallowed hard, eyes wet. "I lost sight of that. I stepped away. Let wolves run my house. I let fear disguise itself as efficiency. But I see now, it's not too late." Frank turned to Elena, who had her hand over her mouth, tears quietly streaming down her face. "You reminded me what this place could still be. You didn't just scan groceries. You showed kindness when no one was looking. That's leadership. That's hope." Then his eyes landed on Kyle, the jaded worker who helped frame him. "And you, Kyle, you messed up. You got scared. You played along. But you said something, and you stayed when it would have been easier to run." Kyle nodded slowly, eyes down. "I didn't know how to stop it. I was just trying to keep my job." "Then start now," Frank said. "I'll give you that chance. But I expect you to earn it, every single day." From his coat pocket, Frank pulled out the photo that started it all. The grainy image of a young woman crying alone in the break room. He held it up for the whole staff to see. "This photo, this was my wake-up call. Someone took it and slipped it under my door with one sentence that changed everything." He paused, voice tightening. "They saved this store." Silence. Then quietly, a voice rose from the back. "It was me." Everyone turned. It was the teen boy from the front counter, the quiet one who always scanned fruit like he was afraid to make noise. He stepped forward, visibly shaking. "Doug was my uncle. He gave me the job. But I couldn't watch him do what he did. Not anymore. Not to Elena. Not to customers. My mom, she used to talk about you, Mr. Hayes. Said you were the kind of man who didn't just sell food. You gave people dignity." Frank walked over, looked him in the eyes, then pulled him into a hug. "Your mother raised a brave young man, and you just helped save the heart of this entire company." Weeks later, the Springfield store reopened with a new manager, Elena. Frank installed cameras, fair pay policies, and a zero-tolerance rule for corruption chain-wide. And that teen boy? Frank gave him a scholarship from the company's new Fresh Futures program for young employees who show moral courage. Outside the front door now hangs a giant plaque with these words, "Integrity is not what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when they're not." Frank Hayes. Frank still visits the store, sometimes in disguise, sometimes not, because every time a cashier cries, the whole community should hear it. Subscribe to Undercover Files for stories that expose the truth and heal the heart.